Happy New Year and welcome to our first workshop of 2026. Thank you to everybody who participated in these workshops in 2025, and thank you for joining us again this year. These workshops are hosted by the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council, a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to mobilize residents to protect their homes, communities, and environments from catastrophic wildfire. We host these workshops every third Friday of the month at 1 p.m. on Zoom, so be sure to mark your calendars. Today we have a presentation on Ready Your Ventura Neighborhood, a program I'm very interested to learn more about. If any resident leader has worked with me in 2025, I talked a lot about the Map Your Neighborhood program. This program is kind of similar off of that, but it's modeled for the City of Ventura. Those principles can be applied to any neighborhood looking to be disaster ready, so I definitely recommend everybody check out this presentation and share it with your neighbors. Some introductions. So my name is Natasha Saxena. I've been with the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council for about 4 years now. I've worked as a regional Firewise coordinator for the past few years, and I help Firewise communities apply for the Firewise program and maintain their status as a recognized Firewise community. We also have Sarah Rodriguez with us, who is our operations coordinator. Sarah is going to drop a link to a Google document that'll have all of the resources and links we'll discuss today. So if you're ever wondering, oh, what was that one link that we talked about today, you can just save that document and click the links within there. And then we also have Mack Douglass with us, who's going to be our guest presenter. He's the Emergency Services Manager with the City of Ventura Police Department. Couple of ground rules. Please save your questions at the end of the presentation or drop them off at the chat. During our Q&A, I always get to the chat first. So if you drop your questions in the chat, I'll always review those first and make sure we get to all of your questions. Please remain on mute for the duration of the presentation. If it's a really small group, sometimes I'll unmute us all for the Q&A section. And then turn off your camera if you don't want to be recorded. This is a recorded presentation and it will be available on YouTube. Please be respectful of everyone's time during the Q&A, and if you have more questions, I'll show you how to schedule a one-on-one chat with me. Okay, so we updated our website. If you go to our website, venturafiresafe.org/FirewiseUSA, you'll see it's slightly updated with some of the same resources except upgraded. If you're new to Firewise, welcome. We have a Firewise in 5 minutes introductory video to tell you about the program and about how our Fire Safe Council supports locally. One of the most popular things that I launched last year in 2025 was the RAP workshops. That's where I walk you through the major steps of the Firewise application, and we pretty much finish the application in a 3-part process. RAP stands for Risk Assessment and Action Plan Workshop. So I'll walk you through the risk assessment and then the action plan and then applying online. But go ahead and check that out if you can. And also on our website is how you're going to schedule a chat with me if you have more questions or want to do a RAP workshop, or if you have questions on the renewal process, which happens annually for Firewise communities. So you can go scroll down that page and you'll find the chat with our coordinator, the middle button there. You'll also see the watch past workshops on YouTube on that page as well. So our agenda for today, I'm going to walk you through a couple of upcoming events and announcements, and then I'll pass it over pretty quickly to Mack to talk about Ready Your Ventura Neighborhood, and then we'll go for a Q&A. So our 2026 Chipper event schedule is out. We've already discussed with the neighborhoods, and they are all booked for those specific days and times. If you want a Chipper event in your neighborhood, you can go to venturafiresafe.org/Chipper and submit an interest form saying that you would want to have a Chipper event in your community, maybe in 2027. So you'll see that some of these are citywide, like Santa Paula and Fillmore in April and June. Those will be citywide Chipper events, but some of them are actually specific to a neighborhood, like the Wildwood community in Thousand Oaks happening in May, or the Ondolando neighborhood in Ventura. You can click to view the maps to see if you're a resident in those communities. We often prioritize Firewise communities for these Chipper events, so that's just another incentive to get your community recognized. And then these are a few resources that I thought were really cool. There are opportunities to get free plants. While it's not recommended to plant within zone zero, which is the first 0 to 5 feet from your home or deck, we do definitely encourage folks to plant natives beyond zone zero. This will help the pollinator habitats and our soil throughout the county. If you're curious about what the local standards are for planting, I'd check out BCFD's Standard 515. So the current local regulation says that plants are not allowed to be planted within 12 inches of the home or deck, or 1 times the height of the nearest plant, whichever one is greater. That's the current local standard, so you technically could still plant within zone zero, but it's just not too recommended. For planting beyond zone zero, you want to keep anything within 30 feet of your home. You want to keep any plant below 4 feet and anything beyond 30 feet below 6 feet. So check out the Standard 515 for more on that. There's free plant Saturdays with the SAMO Fund. I volunteered there myself. It was a really nice experience, which is why I also have it as a team building activity. And then the Los Angeles County Fire Department's Forestry Division. They're in Calabasas. Anyone can call them or email them to see if they're going to be on site sometime that week. They'll give you 5 to 10 free plants, which is quite a lot. So you could also maybe add them to your annual events and pass them out to local residents. And then if you're looking for Zone Zero updates from the Board of Forestry, the United Policyholders will be having a Zoom workshop on it on January 20th at 1 p.m. Again, you can check the chat. Sarah will drop that link in the chat to see how you can register and click on that link to register. They'll also be going over some of the reports that came out of the Los Angeles wildfires. All right, now without further ado, I'll pass it over to Mack to share his screen. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen as soon as I find that button. There we go. Okay, Mack, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you guys for having me. So a little bit of background to start with. Radio Ventura Neighborhood came out of a collaboration between a few of our CERT students. Has anybody on the call heard of CERT before? Stands for the Community Emergency Response Team. It's a program that we typically teach over 6 weeks. It's one class a week, 3 hours a night, and then there's a final drill. It does a really good job of teaching our residents the absolute basic necessary skills to make themselves an asset instead of a liability in the wake of a major disaster. I'm a huge fan of the program. I'm our program lead for Ventura and also one of our instructors. So as much as I love that program, the major drawback is that it's very labor intensive and resource intensive for the city that's hosting and the instructional cadre. It means that there's a limit on how much throughput we have on those programs. So a couple of those CERT students went on to start the Ondolando Firewise Community Council. And I think that Natasha would probably agree that they're one of the more active groups around. And so they were looking for a way to adapt some of what they learned in CERT to their work in their Firewise Community Council. One of them came across a document and a program called Radier LA Neighborhood, which was really geared toward multifamily residences in and around LA County. But the program had good bones, so we wound up taking that and doing everything we could to Venturaize it, if you will. So we launched this program late last year, and you will be the fourth or fifth group who's had me come out to talk about this. Basically, the agenda for the rest of my presentation is to go through this page by page. I'm happy to answer questions as we go, unless you would prefer to hold it to the end. Sometimes this works better if it's a little bit more conversational, but I'll leave that
Whatever
up.
you prefer. So if you prefer people to talk during the presentation, then absolutely, let's go for it.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Feel free to interrupt. Let's make this a conversation because it gets real boring if I'm just up here flipping through a PDF. I'll go ahead and start with an insert instead of the main book. The insert that we have is designed to keep things up to date. So every once in a while, terminology in this industry changes. The National Weather Service has been having a bit of a field day with PDS statements and various different terms that they're using for things. So we made this insert to be easily updated so that the rest of the book will remain valid. So as of right now, all of these are commonly used terms that people should be aware of. If you're on a Firewise call, I'm going to assume that you're aware of what a red flag warning means and a fire weather watch. Um, I also assume that since you guys are probably the tip of the spear in terms of community preparedness, an evacuation warning and an evacuation order are two different things. A warning means that we're aware of the situation that might evolve into a threat to property or life. An evacuation order is a lawful order based on circumstances that have reached that critical threshold. Basically, we need you to leave now, and there's not going to be further assistance until the disaster has passed. The third kind of evacuation adjacent thing that we do, especially with VC alerts, is a shelter in place. We do those pretty frequently for law enforcement activity, but I can also see a use case there for something like a hazmat spill, where we'd want people to remain safe inside their homes. We have a number of different resources here for people to get and stay informed. When community groups ask me, what's the single biggest thing I can do to better my preparedness, my answer is always increase your situational awareness, be aware of what's going on around you, not just on a day-to-day basis, but have a macro awareness of what hazards the area that you live in face. If you're up against the wildland urban interface, obviously wildfire is something that you're going to be worried about. In a lot of places around Ventura, that also means that you should worry about landslides and that we need to keep an eye on how much rain that we're getting. Folks that live down in the coastal zone need to be concerned about, potential coastal flooding events or tsunamis. Just that baseline level of awareness will help you make better decisions going forward. So that kind of rounds out the insert, and so we'll go ahead and start moving through the booklet now. I imagine that most of the people on this call are signed up for VC Alert. Um, if you're not, I really urge you to. It's a great system. We use it frequently. It's really the best tool that I have for reaching out to folks. But if we don't have your number, I can't reach you. We're also encouraging people to do what they can to take additional training. So if people are get picked up in this program on a neighborhood basis, we'd like them to look into CERT. We'd like them to look into CPR, and all the other training that's out there at free or low cost from a lot of your local law enforcement agencies or the Red Cross or any one of these other disaster preparedness agencies that are there to help. Um, let's see. We're moving on to the mapping your neighborhood part of this. To set the tone here, in a major disaster, our resources are going to be depleted incredibly quickly. Best case scenario at VPD, let's say something happens on an afternoon where I have two shifts that are still currently working. That means I have basically 16 officers covering the entire city. If I have to evacuate just one or two neighborhoods, that's going to wipe out the manpower of both patrol teams. It's going to take time for mutual aid resources to arrive. We do have a robust mutual aid system. It works. It takes time to marshal those resources. So there's going to be a critical period during or after a major incident where first responders are not going to be able to reach you. I wish I could say something else, but that's the facts of the matter. If you're prepared, like I said earlier, you have a shot at being an asset instead of a liability to yourself, to your family, to your neighborhood. So really, we're trying to push the idea of taking quite a bit of personal responsibility for your own preparedness here. Next page, we start the 9 steps that we've put together for what you should do immediately following a disaster or major incident. First thing we want to do is make sure that we are safe. And if you have heavy clothing, stuff that you'd want to put on with potential hazards that might be outside, you obviously want to don that. And then working out from ourselves, we want to make sure that our families are safe. For me, that includes my wife, my two daughters, and my elderly mother. So, you know, the the point that I want to make here is that if you have family members who are elderly or might need a little bit more help when something happens, make sure that you prioritize checking in on that person. You'll also want to follow your procedures for shutting off utilities. You'll want to know if your house is all gas or if you have or all electric or if you have some level of gas service. You'll want to be aware of those and make sure that you know how to shut them off and that you have the proper tools to shut those valves off. It's also a good idea, depending on the nature of the incident, to provide yourself an additional water resource by filling up your bathtub or sink or whatever large container you might have. At the end of the booklet, we include a help or OK sign for people to stick on their doors or in a window to let when first responders are able to get to that area, to help us triage who's going to need the most help soonest. If we see an OK sign, we know we can keep on rolling to the people who have a help or a problem sign up. You might want to consider putting your fire extinguisher where neighbors can see it. I've given this presentation to some groups who have some concerns about leaving fire extinguishers out, given their proximity to where vagrants might be living. Use your best judgment, but if my neighbor's house was burning down and I already expended my fire extinguisher and he had another one in plain sight, that kind of doubles our chances. Um, Moving on, we when we deploy this on an HOA or a neighborhood scale, we help people decide where they want to have a gathering site and a secondary gathering site. For a lot of these HOAs or mobile home parks, they're selecting their community centers or some other relatively sturdily constructed building somewhere in close proximity. You'll then want to move on to having your communications team listen to emergency alerts through AM or FM radios. Um, in our area, that would include the City of Ventura, the Ventura Police Department, the Ventura Fire Department, and the County Sheriff's Office. And then we want to disseminate that information. Not every, everybody might not have a radio, and you helping us get that message out would be massively important. And then we'd want to make sure that we check on our neighbors who have help signs up and determine what aid that we can render them. As long as we keep in mind that we don't want to overextend ourselves and become another casualty that needs help. After that team has completed their work, we want to have them come back to the gathering site and figure out what next steps are going to be. We have a page for folks to draw out their building layout, which can be used as a resource for folks that might need to do search and rescue. And then this page can be kept by the person who's coordinating the neighborhood level Radio Ventura neighborhood team. We have a page for people to identify and write down their gathering site. We have a spot for people who might have the ability to provide care for the young or the old, anybody in the neighborhood that might need additional care, and then we'd have them identify and write that down. The block coordinators would be kind of like the CERT team leader. They would have overall responsibility. I guess in my world, the closest equivalent title would be the incident commander. And then just like we do for the standard emergency management system or any of the other ICS systems out there, we kind of break this down into functional teams. So team one would be responsible for communications, whether that's listening to a radio. If you guys have a walkie-talkie or a radio system, they'd be responsible for deploying and maintaining that. In a couple of the communities that I've worked with, they've been lucky to have ham radio operators, which are they're a fantastic resource. We actually partner with an amateur radio communication service team to provide our city EOC with kind of a last line of communication shortwave setup. It's a huge resource. If you have folks in your community who are into that kind of thing, make good friends with them. Team two would be responsible for care and sheltering. Team three would be utility and safety. So that would include things like, um, identifying and cordoning off hazards like down power lines or um, in the recent rains that we had in Ventura, we had a culvert fail and try and eat a resident's backyard. So, that would be something that would want to be cordoned off. And then neighbor wellness would be checking in on, making sure that everybody's doing well. Those teams are kind of further broken out on this page. Um, and Team 4 would also be responsible for doing the kind of light search and rescue tasks. We have instructions up here for, kind of universally understood symbology for search and rescue. When you have a team enter, you have a slash, and when you have the team come back and having cleared that house or that structure, you make an X. And then to assist neighborhoods in forming these teams, we encourage people to share their skills. I've yet to work with one of these neighborhoods where, we didn't fill most of these in our first sitting, and which never included the full breadth of the community. So I think in general, people would be surprised with the level and breadth of skills that their neighbors might have. And the purpose of this program is to start conversations and be a framework for these community teams to grow and maintain themselves organically. And this is where those conversations start. We've encouraged people to talk about their skills. Now we're moving on to identifying who has what in the community. Again, I've been pleasantly surprised each one of these meetings that I've attended by how many folks have at least part of this and how well a community might fare if everybody pulls together. We have a checklist here that helps people pack an emergency go bag. When I'm lucky enough to present this in person, I have a model go bag that I bring along. Most of the things that are in that bag are on this list. I have a few extra things just because I kind of do this for a living. Um, and it's a personal passion of mine. We talk about the evacuation zones that the city identified during our 2024 evacuation planning effort. It kind of breaks the city up into logical sections that might face the same hazards and might have impacts on one another during an evacuation. For instance, we split up the west side into two pieces because we know that evacuating either side of this is going to be difficult on its own, but we know that we would need to sequence one before the other because evacuating the entire thing is basically impossible at one time, as we learned during the Thomas Fire. We further provide an evacuation checklist, again, going over the terminology and helping people understand what they should prioritize if time is short. Um, the evacuation warning, it may or may not become an evacuation order, but we encourage people to plan on that being a 60-minute at best timeline. And then we allow people to write out contacts lists. We intentionally have them do this on paper, where that might seem cumbersome in an era of iPhones, but when your electronics are not working, it is helpful to have something in pen and paper. We have had a couple of communities that have needed extra pages for this. We provide this as a PDF to anybody who asks, so feel free to modify or, include extra blank pages of anything that you feel is necessary. And then, as I mentioned before, we're down to the help and okay signs that are located at the end of the book, and that kind of rounds out the program. I know I sped through that, but I wanted to see if people had questions or if there's anything I can go back over to clarify or further elucidate on.
Hi, Mac. That was great. Yeah, but there are a couple questions in the chat. Do you want me to read them off to you?
Yeah, that would be terrific. I'm working off a laptop, so my screen
Okay.
real estate's limited.
Of course. Okay, so one of the first questions we got actually was semi-related. It is, if there's a shelter in place in order, would it be safe to stay in my swimming pool? Is one of the questions. And then I had somebody say indoors to stay away from the smoke, and if you have a swimming pool, you're ahead of the fire.
That's more or less true. So we would be providing additional details with a shelter in place order. When these alerts go out, it's we would not be sending them out without some kind of context that would allow you to make appropriate decisions. If it's a law enforcement related thing and it's a barricaded subject, you're probably okay to stay in your pool, although generally I would encourage you to go inside the house. If it becomes a SWAT deployment, um, bullets don't stop at fences. So use your best judgment. If it's a hazmat situation, yeah, you're definitely going to want to go inside your house because what we're concerned about is being diluted into the air, and the pool's not going to help you.
Right. Thank you. And then someone asked where can they get this booklet? I linked it. It's the cityofventura.ca.gov/Ready Your Ventura neighborhood, kind of.
Yeah, Natasha also has a copy of it, so she would be more than happy to share it with you, I assume.
Yeah. So everybody that asked for the link to this document, we responded to your question and the link is available there. And then another question, does Mac go to community meetings to do a presentation like an HOA Firewise meeting? This is outside of Ventura County, Ventura City, just letting you know. So you can answer whether you go outside of Ventura or not.
If requested to, I would, but I'd really encourage you to reach out to your local jurisdiction because I may or may not have the right answers, and I certainly wouldn't want to step on the toes of your local police or fire department if they've got a different idea of what should be done. I would be more than happy to share this material with any local government and do what I can to help them get their own similar program off the ground if that's what needs to happen.
Thank you. That's great. And I think what's so amazing about this is that I think a Firewise community did come to you mentioning Ondolando came to the emergency services office and shared the LA version of this program. So if you're outside of Ventura County, I'd probably recommend doing the same thing, sharing this program with your emergency services manager in your city.
And I'll add to that. So
Yeah.
not only did Ondolando Firewise bring the LA version of it to my attention, when after we did a first draft at Venturaizing it, we deployed it with them as our pilot program, and they provided a huge amount of feedback on what was working well and what wasn't. And so what's in front of you now is the third version that it incorporates all of their feedback and then some minor tweaks that my side of the house had to make it kind of easier to follow and increase its utility to people.
Oh, amazing. So, a question for me then, if a community in Ventura is wanting to get started with this, would you recommend that they just print this out, try to do it themselves, or would they get in contact with you to try to get that done?
They're more than welcome to take a swing at it themselves, but I think the same way you got a hold of me via the web link, that's open to any group in Ventura that wants me to come out and kind of walk them through what the program's intended to do.
Amazing. Okay, great. So if anybody is wondering, the link that Sarah dropped earlier in this chat has the link to the website that Mac is getting this document from. And on that website, there is this fill out information if you want a workshop from Mac in your neighborhood. And you can just fill out that interest form. And that's how I got him to be here today. So that's really, really great and useful link.
I will disclaim that typically I need a little bit of lead time. So I have two little kids and I'm very active in their lives. So I'm happy to make the time. I just need a little bit of lead time to help arrange childcare for an after hours meeting.
Perfect. Great to know. Let's see. Any other ones? Does Mac provide HOA training for emergency preparedness? We are planning an HOA outreach session this year, and this info would be excellent info. I think that's similar.
I would be happy to come present Riven to your HOA. As far as like emergency preparedness training specifically for an HOA, we don't currently do that, but we do have the ongoing CERT program. Currently, we're trying to do kind of catch up on providing it to our Spanish-speaking residents. So we'll have two, maybe three Spanish classes this year, and we'll do an English class later this spring. Signups for that should be going live probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So keep an eye on the City of Ventura's website if you're interested in CERT. I could see a future where, once we've kind of met the demand of the community, when our enrollment starts to, when we have difficulty enrolling people for a citywide class, if there was an HOA that wanted us to come out or, to dedicate a class to an HOA, I wouldn't be opposed to that. My goal is to train as many people as efficiently as I can.
Right. And then another question in regards to fire, any thoughts on LA County Community Fire Brigade model that's in place?
Um, it's a very interesting program. I'm not on the fire side of things, so I have less knowledge of what the fire department's ideas for volunteer programs are. I do know that programs like that are, again, very resource intensive. When I restarted the CERT program in Ventura, I wanted my vision was to have it be a persistent program like that fire brigade program, but volunteer coordination is such a high touch requirement um, that when you're an office of one person like I am, it's very difficult to justify that level of effort on a volunteer program. And I think our fire department's in the same boat, but I don't want to speak for them.
Thank you for your answer. I'm also dropping the link to the CERT calendar in the chat. If anybody is interested in CERT, this is throughout the county. This calendar is Ventura County Fire Department's calendar, and it talks about Max Ventura City CERT classification happening in January and February. Happens in Camarillo, Simi Valley, Santa Paula. So anybody can, and throughout the county. So I just dropped that in the chat for you too.
Our January class that's starting next week is Spanish. Just
Oh, great.
disclaim that.
Okay, that's awesome. Um, and then another question, are there any programs that have tried to integrate the Neighborhood Watch program with the CERT program for more reach into the community?
I'm not aware of it, but I'm always up for resource sharing and innovation. And I'd be interested to see the outcome of that if anybody wanted to give it a shot.
Yeah, Neighborhood Watch is a pretty popular program. I could probably even get somebody from there to speak eventually, and then maybe I'll invite you, Mac. Um, okay, any other questions in the chat? And if you want, you can stop sharing your screen. We can just um, open it up to anybody that wants to unmute and have a question. We have a really great amount of attendees today, so that's awesome. 27 people. That's really, really great. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah. No questions? Rats.
Mac, what would be like the first step somebody would take if they wanted to implement this into their neighborhood? And let's say they don't have, they're not from Ventura,
Um,
or they are in Ventura, whichever one you want to answer.
okay. If they're not in Ventura and their jurisdiction doesn't have anything like this in production, I would invite them to take what we've built, find out who your local emergency manager is. If you're in an area where the sheriff's, if you're county unincorporated or you're a contract city like Thousand Oaks or Moore Park, your emergency services office is part of the sheriff's office. So I would get in touch with them. If you don't know how to do that, you can reach out to Natasha and I can help you. I can help facilitate that contact. If you are an area of the county that has its own Office of Emergency Services, so Simi Valley has their own, it's part of the police department. Um, Port Hueneme has their own police department that acts as their emergency services. Same deal with Santa Paula, and then Oxnard has its own emergency services as part of their fire department.
Right. And also, I know that Ondulando or is implementing in the middle of implementing this program. What are some of the feedback that you've heard from them on this program? Just like out of curiosity.
The hardest thing that they've had to overcome is trust. You have a neighbor who you may not have met before show up and invite you to a community meeting, and then all of a sudden, somebody's asking you, do you own a generator? So people are suspicious and slow to trust in in the world that we live in. So that's been something that they've had to deal with. So the way that they combat it, they've worked on combating that is they started with going out into their neighborhood, knocking on the door, just chatting to people about it, and having some meetings ahead of, trying to put together these lists that people might feel uncomfortable contributing to. Um, they also, a lot of folks in that community are of advanced age, I'll say. So they have a specific focus on um, setting up partnerships to ensure that people are able to evacuate, especially folks with mobility issues. So there are a couple of neighborhood specific concerns that they've made their own tweaks, and I'm a huge fan of that, and I'm really really proud of the work that those folks have done.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's very relatable for a lot of people in Firewise. It's knocking on neighbors' doors, getting it to trust. So it's a very similar challenge that folks have to overcome in the Firewise program too.
I believe
Is
it.
there anyone from Ondulando that wants to share a little about the program? If we have anybody on the call or who has any comments on the program? If not, no worries. Okay, any last questions for Mac? Oh, okay. We have some question raise your hand features. So Nicholas, do you want to unmute yourself and you can ask your question?
Yeah, sure. First, I just want to thank Natasha and Mac for putting this training on together. Just a quick introduction. So I'm a program manager with a program in the San Gabriel and Antelope Valleys that's focused on increasing resilience and initiatives like Firewise in the WUI around there. So not so much a question, just wanted to briefly introduce ourselves. And if anyone has any ideas or connections with partners in those areas that might be useful to collaborate with, please feel free to reach out to us, and I can put our program email in the chat for you if you'd like. Thank you very much
Yeah,
again.
please do. Thanks, Nicholas. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Okay, any other questions? I think actually is Sarah. Oh, hi, Mason. You
It's
want
me.
to?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I'll echo that. Thank you so much, Mac, for the presentation. I'm curious, and I think you maybe touched on it a tiny bit, but I'm curious if you've seen or heard really about this framework in action yet. Maybe if not in Ventura, because it's so new, like in the original LA program, and kind of what does that roll out and what does it look like in practice?
I haven't actually heard any anecdotal um, pieces about this being tested under a real world emergency. Um, like I said, the one that we based it off of in LA County was designed for multifamily housing, and I don't know that we had a whole lot of lost multifamily housing during the most recent rounds of fire. I think the bulk of
Mhm.
structures that were impacted were single family, so which would be outside of the scope of that original
Okay,
program that we started from.
gotcha.
Thanks for your question, Mason. If anybody doesn't know, Mason's our programs manager at the Fire Safe Council. So thanks for joining us.
Thought she
Okay,
looked
any
familiar.
yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Oh, just a quick question. So I'm in the unincorporated area. So does the sheriff's department have something similar to this already? Or, because this goes way beyond maybe what they have, but do you know if they
I
have?
uh, I do not believe so. I, as far as the community training model for county unincorporated goes, and I'm also a resident of county unincorporated. County fire handles CERT for those areas, and usually they'll ask you to team up with the city that you're closest to. So I live in an unincorporated county pocket within Thousand Oaks. So if my wife wanted to get CERT trained, she would go through the city of Thousand Oaks. As far as something equivalent to what I've talked about today, I'm not aware of it, but I am also not aware of everything in the county's toolbox.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any last other questions? Okay, there we go, Lillian. This is great. So many questions. I'm loving it.
Our community, 259 homes,
Mhm.
has done an assessment, and we've done a lot of, the venting things. And a lot of people have hardscape, their zone zero. And we are about a week or two away from submitting our 3-year plan.
Mhm.
Is there anyone else on here today that has submitted that might have some advice?
Yeah, that's great. So, Mac, this is actually a question more for the Firewise USA programs. Lillian, I'm going to answer your question in just a second and let folks answer that. But before that, I just want to make sure we get all of Mac's questions off so that he can jump off here in a few minutes. Any other questions from Mac before we jump to Firewise topics?
I'm glad that you're ready to field that question because I had no idea what she was talking about.
Yeah, of course. Okay, then, Mac, I think we'll let you go. You're welcome to stay on if there's any last questions that people do come up with in a few minutes. But otherwise, thank you so much for your presentation. It was excellent. I think we can all really appreciate the work that you're doing, and the fact that you're listening to your residents is so great and encouraging to hear with you starting this program. So thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for having me. I'm actually going to head out. It's about time to go pick up my girls.
Of course.
So have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you for having me again. Bye.
Okay, bye, Mac. Thank you. All right, so Lillian, for your question on the 3-year action plan, I'll definitely let anybody else chime in. If you do want more specific 3-year action plan help, you can schedule a chat with me. I believe your resident leader already is scheduling a chat with me for your 3-year action plan, but I'll walk you through what I've walked most folks through, or any other regional coordinator has walked the communities through. But basically what we're looking at for the action plan is those 4 main categories. And then I have a draft of what to include in each of those categories. One of them is the Map Your Neighborhood program, which is what the program was we talked about today was, but that's for any county or any community. And then there's a couple of other things to kind of pay attention to, like increasing your whatever's written in your risk assessment. You'll want to slowly work towards compliance year by year. So let's say you're wanting to upgrade your vents. You would say we want to upgrade our vents 50% by year 2, and then another 50% by year 3. They just want to see it increased year by year. But happy to go through it with you as well. Does anybody want to chime in on how their experience was for the action plan and your community?
Yeah, this is Dave. I'm with the ClearPoint Firewise group. We actually just got recognized in either end of November or early December last year. And the best advice I have is to schedule those meetings with Natasha, because that was super helpful. The things she pointed out, we incorporated into our plan, and it got accepted actually a lot quicker than I thought it would. So the other thing is, I'll put a link in the chat, but I posted ours on our website. And so you're welcome to, cheat off of it. I ended up using a lot of what Orlando Firewise had put in their 3-year action plan in ours. So I think it's always a good idea to see what's worked before.
That's fantastic, Dave. I love that you posted on your website, because then residents can check it out too. We also have the Ondolando version on our website, as well as one of our sample documents, and a couple of other sample documents there too. Cool. Okay, any other ones want to chime in about their action plan or have a question about your Firewise community? And then we also always have flyers available for the community. So if you're having trouble with, I guess trust was one of the things that Mac had mentioned was a challenge in their community. Sometimes flyers introducing the Firewise program can be really helpful. So we have door hangers available for any Firewise communities that introduce what the program is. And you can just request that through our flyer request form available on the website too.
Natasha,
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, go ahead.
not a question, but a sort of an announcement. I learned from Mike Warford, who came out to Santa Rosa Valley along with Celine Mumi. And those two together were about, the wildfire preparedness, and he handles everything from 0 to 100 feet. So he's sort of the new Larry Williams, I guess. And then she handles beyond 100 feet. So she's looking at, fuel beds and things like that. At any rate, he said something interesting. He said that they're getting additional resources this year, maybe later this year, to dedicate staff to support Firewise specifically for different areas of the county. So each area of the county would have a go-to person of VC Fire Department like they go to you, but any assistance they need from county fire, they could get it through that person. Plus, they will be the designated person for the yearly clearance. If you are in an area that has to do the annual clearance, instead of sort of rotating it around at different fire stations, it's like that person will be in charge of making sure that happens uh, in compliance every year. And I guess when we get the Zone Zero thing, they're going to be leading the effort to how do we educate and enforce that. So that's just news that I picked up from him. I was like, oh, cool, more Firewise resources.
That's awesome. And also really good to hear just in general. We think we can use with 40 plus communities in the county, we can definitely use all the staff on this. That's great. Thank you, Kevin.
Mhm.
All right. Any other last questions? And then we might end a little early today. All right, then everyone, thank you so much for coming again to today's workshop. And I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces, so it's great to see you from last year too, and new people too. The Firewise community is really growing, so it's great that you can rely on your neighbors. If you're curious about what Firewise communities are near you, we have a neighborhood map on our website that updates maybe like twice a year. At the moment, we try to update it as we get new communities, but at the moment it's going to have a little bit of a pause for a tiny bit. But check that out and see what communities neighboring to you, and I can always connect you to the resident leader there. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy New Year, and thank you so much for coming. Bye-bye.